Welcome to Chautauqua People. My guest today is Paul Perry. He currently serves as president of the Chautauqua Property Owners Association, also known as CPOA. He's an Ohio native who earned his undergraduate and law degrees from The Ohio State University, Columbus, Ohio. He followed his bride through a career in Kroger supermarkets, where she started out as a cashier and ended up as a senior vice president. He practiced law along the way in the states of Ohio, Tennessee, and Michigan. The focus of his practice has been in real estate law. Paul, how did you find your way to Chautauqua?
Well, when we last moved to Cincinnati in '03, one of our good neighbors that moved there at about the same time as we did, they were out to dinner with us, and they started talking about whether we'd ever heard of Chautauqua. I remember Chautauqua from back in the 70s when Chautauqua would broadcast its lectures on public radio in public radio's infancy. So I knew about it from that, but I didn't even know where Chautauqua is. So they invited us to come for 3 or 4 days to see if we liked it, and the rest is history.
So how long have you been coming to Chautauqua then?
This is our 15th year.
15th year. And you own a house, is that correct?
Yes, we do.
And how long have you owned the house?
We bought it just about 5 years ago.
Great. I hope that's been a good experience for you.
It's been wonderful.
Great. Now tell me a little bit about Chautauqua Property Owners Association. How it's organized, what your responsibilities are, what it does.
Well, the CPOA, or the Chautauqua Property Owners Association, was established to provide representation for the various property owners within the institution. We're not part of the institution, we're a separate entity. What our biggest function is to provide communication and a way to solve problems for property owners through various communication channels. We also led the way on getting the lighting system, the street lighting system, transferred from National Grid to the utility district. But otherwise, the main function of the association is to enhance the pleasure, the experience of property owners within the institution.
Mm-hmm. When I think of this building, I come back to CPOA, and one of our CPOA officers at large, Laura Damon, was the one who really led the movement in the local community, not to spend millions of dollars for a new government building, but to reuse this. And for the Access Channel, we have this wonderful studio facility, and for people who are paying taxes, they get to reuse some buildings without millions of dollars of bonds to be written off. I think that's magnificent. Now, can you tell me the process by which CPOA members then get to the Board of Trustees at Chautauqua?
Well, there's no direct link from the CPOA to the Board of Trustees. We have an indirect link in that there are 4 Class B trustees on the Board of Trustees. There are Class A, which are normally what you think of trustees, and they're selected by the board itself. But the 4 Class B trustees are elected by the property owners. The CPOA screens prospective candidates, and we nominate a Class B trustee, which is there's one that's up for election each year. They're 4-year terms. There are 4 Class B trustees. Historically, our nominee is successfully elected by the property owners to the board.
Mm-hmm.
I might also say the 4 trustees, the Class B trustees, serve on the CPOA board as well. So they're the direct link between the Board of Trustees and the CPOA board.
Now, do these CPOA Class B trustees have any difference in voting rights or weighting, that sort of thing, than the others?
Yes, a couple of years ago, we had some extensive conversation about whether it was appropriate for the Class B trustees to be voting members of our board. It was determined that there is at least a potential conflict of interest between the two. Those Class B trustees told us that they would prefer not to have voting rights on our board, because if there were ever a critical issue that came up before the Board of Trustees, they didn't want to be excluded from voting because of conflicts. So as of a couple years ago, the Class B trustees do not have vote. They do have voice, and they also attend all of our meetings.
So that's a change since I was in that situation,
Yes.
and it's a good one. Now, let's talk a little more. Are there current issues that CPOA is working on that will be of significance?
Well, the biggest thing right now that is being developed out of the sight of the public is we contracted with a company called HiveBright, who provides an online platform that's for communications, to keep a directory of the property owners, to be used preliminarily internally only, but we're exploring making that available to members. We'll be able to communicate, do surveys, easily send email blasts, automatically gen out email blasts for dues payments and things like that, all automatically. We expect to have that rolled out for public use for groups and other things that will be coming out of it before the 2020 season. We have also completely revamped our website, and when HiveBright completely comes online, the website will be integrated with the HiveBright platform. Among other things that we're doing, we've enhanced our community connectivity through our what we call our area representatives. The institution, the houses in the institution are broken up into 10 areas geographically. On our board, there's an area rep for each of those 10 areas to communicate more directly with the property owners in those areas. So twice a year now, we have what we call porch chats, where each area rep has an informational chat on a porch or otherwise that they invite the people that have houses within their area to come. Also in attendance, generally there's a trustee there for people to talk to, a CPOA, other CPOA representatives, officers, so that there's open dialogue. And it's producing a lot of information for us to know what our property owners want to do, what their concerns are, what they like about what's going on, what they don't like. Then we also we sponsor the week 0 picnic, or the potluck dinner, which is the week before the season opens. We had about 300 in attendance at that dinner. We normally have a speaker at that dinner, and then we also have 2 Saturday morning meetings that are open forums that property owners and others can attend, can listen to what's going on, and we always leave an opportunity for people to make comments and ask questions. And lastly, as has historically been the case in week 4, we have area picnics where the area reps have picnic for everyone in their area. We just had that last week.
Those are great fun, aren't they?
They are.
And I think my area is absolutely the best in terms of its geography, 5 with Lincoln Park, and there are always some good musicians there to do well. Now, could you talk a little bit about CPOA and lighting changes that are forthcoming?
Yes, so amazingly enough, it was a 10-year effort to get here, but most of the street lighting in Chautauqua was owned by National Grid. So we were paying National Grid for 2 things. One was we were leasing all that lighting from National Grid. A lot of it was antiquated. Some of it was maybe 50 years old, but we were still leasing it from them. They all mostly had incandescent bulbs, and there were a hodgepodge of others. In front of our house, there was even a mercury vapor light. But they consumed a lot of power. Through the efforts of a number of people that had spent a huge amount of time and brought in a lot of expertise, as of this past February, the utility district purchased all of the National Grid street lighting from National Grid. So we no longer have to pay leasing fees to National Grid. And over this coming season, before the next season starts, the 2020 season, they will be replacing all of the street lights that are owned by the utility district. There are a few lights that are owned by the institution that's different, but I can't even remember the number, but it's a huge number. All the lighting will be replaced with LED lighting, and it's all designed to be downlight, so it's preserving dark skies, which we don't have now. The power consumption will be cut by something like 80%. So between the leasing payments that were being paid before, which went through the utility district and you and I and others were paying for, and the power consumption that's being saved, the purchase by the utility district will be paid for in about 4 years.
So in 4 years, that will be written off. Indeed, that's paid for. That's remarkable. And the power consumption is reduced by 80.
About 80%.
So it's only 20% of the power bill or consumption that we had before.
Yes.
And that's a remarkable improvement, isn't it?
Yes.
With better lighting for those.
Yes.
Now, there were complaints about lots of the Cobra had mercury vapor lights splashing up on porches, into bedroom windows and the like, and presumably most of that will be corrected with a new installation.
Yes.
Remarkably. Let's talk for just a minute, switch gears a little bit, and tell me about what you did in real estate law, perhaps how that applies here. What were your major activities?
Well, it was a broad range. I started out, when I first went into practice, was just basically residential real estate and real estate title work. I ended up doing, along the way, I did a lot of bankruptcy work, both on the creditor side and on the debtor side. Ultimately, the last 20 years or so of my practice, I represented commercial real estate lenders in working out failed real estate property loans throughout Michigan, Tennessee, Ohio, Minnesota, Indiana, Kentucky, so in that sort of the middle section of the country. And it was, which included during 08, 09, and 10, when there were a lot of failed real estate projects in those days.
It was very sad, wasn't it?
It really was.
I remember, I can go back and I can safely quote him, our previous guest here, Jim Pardo practiced real estate law at the time, bankruptcy law at the time, and he said so many of the people that he dealt with did everything right, but it was just that the economy soured up. Often you would hear people in bankruptcy had too much debt that had to be refinanced at one time or another and made some strategic errors. And during that time frame, 08, whatever, lots of very good people just lost it.
In fact, in those days, particularly in the commercial area, there were generally very few loans made. So if your loan matured and there was no new loan to be had, then it ended up in foreclosure or deed in lieu of foreclosure.
This is far away from CPOA, but I can't resist a good question. As we see a lot of retail space not doing well, shopping malls and the like closing, what do you foresee for that?
Generally across the country. Indeed. Or in this area?
Yes.
Well, across the country, I think a lot of the retail strip centers, I think, are going to struggle because so many of those had a major retailer as an anchor. And you see one anchor after the next that's failing or failed, like Sears, like Penny's, Macy's is struggling. At all those big box retailers, because so many people are buying online instead of going to those stores, their physical brick and mortar. So what ends up happening in those small strip centers is the big box usually drove the traffic, and then the rest of the merchants were the small stores, and then they benefited from that. So it was a symbiotic relationship between the two. You take the big box out of the picture, and there's nothing to drive the traffic, and so those merchants also fail. So you end up with a lot of strip centers that turn into nail salons and massage parlors and whatever. That's just the very low end of the tenants. Here, what I'm excited about is in the real estate master plan that's being developed by the institution, and in their strategic plan, they're looking at what can be done along 394 to make 394 run through the institution rather than being the outside edge of the institution. There are a lot of buildings on the other side of 394 from the main grounds that that is not the best use of those buildings. So the institution is talking to the county, the state, and otherwise on what can best be done along there to really make that a thriving retail area. I'm excited about that. It may be a number of years until we get there, but that's what's on their mind, thinking where that might go.
So in the long haul, that's will be an improvement for the people of the county to have some more
Right.
good retail, besides just those who come to the institution.
Right.
That's terrific. And I know the shopping mall close to where I live lost the 3 big anchor tenants that you mentioned there, and it's a point of speculation how long that thing will stay open. And when we moved that house 25 years ago, it was a real thriving business in the place. Folks from out of town came to do their shopping, and now it's gone. Let's switch gears here a little bit and tell me a little bit about your family. And I understand you have a daughter who's doing wonderful things.
So my daughter is presently living in Baltimore, Maryland, and attending Johns Hopkins University and working on her doctorate in public health. She has about another year to go, and she'll be finished with her dissertation, and will shortly thereafter have her doctorate. Her 2 children, Jack and January. Jack is 12 and January is 10. They've been coming to Chautauqua ever since they were born. And so, in fact, our granddaughter is here with us even now and is trying to figure out how she can extend her existing 4 weeks of being here into more weeks. Jack would have been here now, except he had baseball team tryouts that he had to return to Baltimore for. Our son-in-law, Ab, is an elementary school teacher at a private school near Annapolis, where our grandkids also go to school there. They have spent a great deal of their time in the last 15 years outside of the country. Our daughter at that time was working for USAID, worked in Mali and West Africa for a couple of years, worked in Bangladesh for 3 years. Before that, they lived in Jakarta, Indonesia for about 3 years. And so our grandchildren are sort of children of the world. They like it in Baltimore, but they're easily transported from one place to the next. So they're doing very well. And in fact, our daughter recently accepted a new job where she's the vice president of public health worldwide for a NGO.
That's great. That's great. And her doctor will be PhD or Doctor of Public Health?
It's a Doctor of Public Health from the Bloomberg School of Public Health in Johns Hopkins.
That's magnificent. That's magnificent. And your wife is involved in Chautauqua also, is she not?
She is indeed. She's a trustee and is actively involved with the visual arts the group. In fact, we just hosted about 20 of the faculty from in the school last night for dinner, and we've really enjoyed our connection with the visual arts, and that's been Marnette that's been taking that lead.
Right. Does she have any special interests, such as painting or electronic stuff, or?
Her special interest is more in management. She was in management in the last basically 25 or 30 years of her being with Kroger, including running 2 of their operating divisions, and then in her capacity as senior vice president, she had 10 of their operating divisions that reported to her. So what she's been doing for fun, it wouldn't be so much fun for me, but she sits on 2 corporate boards in addition to the board of trustees, and she is also connected to the Ohio State University. She's on their foundation board. So that keeps her pretty busy.
Is she an alumna of Ohio?
She is an alumna of Ohio University.
Oh my goodness!
And so we roped her into Ohio State, and we've made a loyal Buckeye out of her, even though she didn't go to school there.
Goodness! I have distant relative who taught at Ohio University, and we always used to have to give him a little bit of a hard time. Say, that's in Columbus, isn't it? Well, no.
Well, in fact, Marnette she was on the Ohio University Board of Trustees for 9 years, and before that she was on the Central Michigan Board of Trustees for, I think, 3 or 4 years.
Goodness. And those are serious responsibilities, aren't they?
They are indeed.
People may tend to make light of those trustees' jobs, but you have to know a lot of details well and be diplomatic, and clearly there's an expectation you'll do some fundraising for the institution.
Yes.
And I presume none of those are buy your way in boards, but that's clearly they're looking for people of character who are going to work hard and do some good work for them. What do you foresee for Chautauqua Property Owners Association in the future?
Well, what we've managed to do is, through our communication channels that we've been developing, and very successfully through some of the great people we have on our board. And we have a wonderful board that are all hard workers, and we all get paid the same. That is nothing, but we volunteer the time, and we have been getting great recognition from the property owners on the channels of communication we're opening. There's always been the perception in the past, I think, that people don't really know what we do, or they think we're too tight with the institution. But what we've managed to do is, with our good relationship with the institution, we can easily communicate with the institution, and we can take concerns back and forth. We can resolve a lot of issues before they grow to be a problem. So that is our first and foremost thing that I see the CPOA doing. So we take people's concerns, we resolve issues, we communicate those issues with the institution or the utility district or others. For example, today I met with Shannon Rosner, the Chief of Staff for President Hill, and with Angela James, the President of the Bird Tree and Garden Club, to figure out what the three of our groups can do to help the lake. And each of us has a unique piece that we can do in collaboration with each other. We can provide a lot of the communication to the community of some of the things that they can do. And as I see it, and I think we all agreed, we can take a carrot approach rather than a stick approach and be able to persuade people with the number of things that they can do. Because if the lake is gone, the lake is dead, then we're going to be in trouble.
That settles it. And it seems like a member gets a great deal out of the membership. And what does it cost?
Presently, our dues are $20 per year. We may increase it a little bit next year. It hadn't been raised for quite some time, and that'll give us the opportunity to do a lot more work. But we presently have, I can't tell you exactly, but it's about 650 paying members, which is remarkable. I think we only have about a little over 1,000 properties, and they're voluntary dues. So when you get that many voluntary dues payers, you must be doing something right.
Indeed, and people step forward, and so often heard very good things said about CPOA and the little things that change along the year due to their initiative. We are almost out of time. What else do we need to cover about real estate law and about, I have one issue for real estate law. Can we talk for just a moment about the forthcoming evaluations and how that goes about? Understanding you are not a New York lawyer, but you've had experience in 3 states.
Well, the main thing that's going to be happening is every so often the township assessor has to reassess all the real estate within the township. And as you can imagine, that's a monumental task. So he has to take a lot of shortcuts, and he uses formulas of how many rooms you have and where your house is located and so forth to come up with a value. Now the valuation, and without getting too far into the weeds, is one thing. The township or the town needs to raise a certain amount of money. So even if the values all go up, there's a good chance that the tax rate will go down because they still need to generate the same amount of money. So the confusing thing is to a lot of people is if their valuations go up, and it's supposed to be based on fair market value, that doesn't mean their taxes are going to go up. That just means the valuation will go up, and it's quite possible that the rate goes down and it'll remain the same. And that'll all be taking place this off-season. The state of New York requires a reassessment every so often. I think it's every 5 years, and it's been 5 years since the last one. So the town has to go about doing their assessment. But that's the essence on that.
Okay, so basically then, if one disagrees with the value that is given, what are the options?
Well, there is an appeals process, and it's an administrative appeal process, so you don't necessarily have to hire a lawyer. Being a retired lawyer, I'm always hesitant to say you don't need a lawyer, but it's set up so that you can go through the process practically without a lawyer if you have documentation to support that the valuation's too high.
Okay, and so that's something that people should anticipate coming, shouldn't they, and be prepared to respond?
Yes, most importantly, when you get the notice of the new assessed value, you need to read on that when you have to appeal, if you're going to appeal, and you need to respond. You need to take action promptly. Don't just throw it in your drawer, because once that time runs out, you can no longer appeal it.
Mm-hmm. That's immensely important, and I've had some success and some setbacks along the way with dealing with this. I would urge everybody to work it hard. We are almost out of time. What else do we need to talk about?
The only other thing another thing that I think the CPOA is going to be doing that I didn't mention is we're going to be looking at the rules for the institution, various rules that are dealing with this, that, and the other thing. Try to clean up all those rules and do away with the ones that aren't really important. Now, we can't do it, but we can try to persuade the institution to do it. There is a deed restriction that's currently in all deeds that the institution has to give their prior consent before you can transfer your property or before you can rent it. I think that's an obsolete thing that hasn't been enforced for a number of years. We're going to try to get those out of the deed restrictions, and I think we may have some success in doing that.
And that's important to modernize that, isn't it, to bring it up to speed. We are out of time, and this has been great fun.
Well, thank you.
So do come back, and thank you for sharing with everybody about the story of CPOA.
Thank you very much.
See you now.